So the Premier League returns tomorrow, and to run alongside the Championship score predictions for this season, we will also be offering up my Premier League score predictions as well. So if you are a Forest, Fulham, Bournemouth fan or any other club that's recently been promoted from the Championship and you've been watching the Championship predictions videos over the last couple of years, don't be going anywhere this year because I've got you guys covered in the Premier League. If you would like to see more of this and you do go on to enjoy, make sure to leave like 250 likes would be massively appreciated, and do let me know down below how you see the opening weekend in the Premier League going. And if you've not already, this is your last chance to go ahead and get involved with the Premier League Fantasy Football League. I'll leave the league code in the description down below. All you need to do then is go ahead and enter that in on Fantasy Football, and we'll see who comes out on top by the end of the season. But without any further ado, let's hop into the predictions. Starting out with the season opener at Selhurst Park on Friday night, we got Crystal Palace going up against Arsenal. It's an interesting game to get the season underway because I think there's a lot of hope and optimism around Arsenal, particularly with what we've seen from them in pre-season so far. I think that Gabriel Jesus is in pretty much everyone's fantasy team at this point, so everyone's expecting big things from him. Not an easy start to the season though, up against a Crystal Palace side who were particularly resilient in their home matches last season. I recently wrote a piece for Stats24 looking into Crystal Palace's sort of home form from last season. I didn't realise just how good they actually were. Defensively, they only conceded 0.89 goals per 90 at home. They only lost 4 home matches throughout the entirety of that season, and last time at Selhurst Park, they ran out as 3-0 winners against Arsenal. So this is a potential banana skin on game week 1 for Arsenal. Crystal Palace last season drew the most matches in the Premier League along with Brighton with 15. So I think this is going to be a tight game. Maybe one goal either way wins this one. But for the season opener, I'm going to sit on the fence for this one. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, and FIFA's going to agree with me. I think that those two may cancel each other out. Next then to Craven Cottage for the early kickoff on Saturday. We've got Fulham going up against Liverpool, and the first of our newly promoted sides to go ahead and talk over. I'm sure that when the fixtures were released, Fulham fans weren't exactly buzzing with the prospect of Liverpool coming to the Cottage on game week 1. But thus is the nature of the Premier League. It's an interesting game. I think that Fulham have been massively boosted by the fact that they have got that Leno deal over the line. It had been long speculated that they were in for him, another goalkeeper to add into that department, and I think he does drastically improve their chances of survival. A top-end goalkeeper that Fulham are getting here, albeit it's not going to be easy on this season opener. Going up against the Liverpool side who scored more away goals than any other Premier League side last season. 45 goals they scored on the road, which was more than anyone else. Liverpool typically like to start the season off with a bit of a bang as well. Someone like Mo Salah especially loves an opening day goal or two. And for Fulham, the fixtures do ease off ever so slightly after this fixture. They've got games against Wolves and Brentford. It does feel like this one might be a little bit of a write-off for them in terms of where they currently are as a squad and how competitive or how far away from that they might be immediately at the start of the season. So score prediction in this one, I'm going to go 4-0 Liverpool, all out for that one. FIFA's going 2-0 Fulham. Next then, and to another one of our newly promoted sides, we've got Bournemouth going up against Aston Villa, and dare I say it, the way Bournemouth perform in this game could end up setting a little bit of a tempo for their season to come. We had those quite worrying comments coming from Scott Parker the other day about the squad as it stands right now is weaker than it was when they were promoted, which is, I'm sure, sending off all sorts of alarm bells with the Bournemouth fans. Now, as of recording, it has been reported that they currently have bids in for 3 different defenders. Whether any of those deals do materialise before game week 1 rolls around, we'll wait and see. It is a tricky fixture against Villa on the opening weekend. I've caught a few glimpses of Villa in pre-season, and I thought they have looked quite decent on a number of occasions actually. Leon Bailey especially looks like he's had a really good pre-season. Hopefully if he's left his injury-ridden first season behind him at Villa, he can click up into gear this time around. We recently had the news about Cameron Archer going ahead and confirming that he'll be staying around for the season as well, which, I mean, as a Preston fan, I'm half gutted that we won't be getting him back, but absolutely I'm wishing him on with all the best for Villa this season. And dare I say it, I think he could be a really useful option, particularly with those 5 substitutes this season come in off the bench, and if he does nick a goal or two in the first half of the season, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see him starting over Watkins or Ings at some stage in this season. For a score prediction in this one, I could see Bournemouth getting a goal. But with them a little bit unsettled at the back, I worry for them in terms of a defensive standpoint. So I'm going to go 2-1 Villa in this game, with FIFA going for a 1-1 draw. Next then to Ellen Road for Leeds up against Wolves. Two sides who have had pretty differing transfer windows up until this point. Leeds, who have been incredibly busy in terms of a couple of big players going out, but they've wasted no time in going ahead and replacing them with some quality, with 6 signings coming in up until this point. The same can't quite be said for Wolves. It's all been a bit quiet on the transfer front, really. Obviously, Nathan Collins has come in, but apart from that, working with pretty much what they were from last season. The blow for Wolves at the start of this season is the fact that Raul Jimenez will be out, I think for the first few weeks actually. So how they go ahead and compensate for that will be interesting to see. I think they'll be relying on a little bit of magic from someone like a Neto, a Podence, or maybe even the Morgan Gibbs-White, who might be thrown straight into the frame for Wolves this season after that impressive loan spell with Sheffield United last time out. I don't feel like this one feels like a massive goal fest, and a 1 goal either way or a score and draw wouldn't surprise me in this one. I think I'm going to go that way. I'm going to go for a 1-1 in this game, with FIFA going 1-0 Wolves. Next then we're heading up to Newcastle for Newcastle up against Nottingham Forest. Particularly interested to see this one and what Nottingham Forest are looking like this year. If you have watched my Premier League predictions video, I am backing Forest as the best performing of the newly promoted clubs. I just think that with that Steve Cooper factor added into the transfer window that they've had so far, I do think there is quite a bit of potential upside for this Nottingham Forest squad, albeit it's not an easy game going into game week 1 away at Newcastle. Newcastle will know all about wanting to get off to a good start to this season. They were absolutely hopeless during the first half of last season under Steve Bruce. From August to January, they only won 1 football match, and it's crazy actually in the end how well they actually finished under Eddie Howe. I think up until this point, Newcastle have had a solid transfer window, but maybe not quite to the extent that a few of us thought in terms of the money spent, some of the positions that have been strengthened and things like that. Obviously still got a long way to go in this transfer market, and it does seem at this point that there are bids in for a few different players. The James Maddison deal, for example, would be a fascinating one for Newcastle. So while some of those parts are still missing from this Newcastle side, maybe there is something in Forest to go ahead and snatch something from this game. They're riding that momentum of the playoff final victory as well, and typically at least one of the newly promoted clubs tends to get something on the opening weekend, and I'll throw that one in there as Forest. I'm not sure they've quite got enough to get the win in this one, but with their style of play, I think they could be a tricky customer for Newcastle. I'll go for a 1-1 draw in that one. FIFA's going 2-0 Forest. Next then to Spurs up against Southampton. I think a lot of people are excited to see what Spurs are capable of this season. Their first full year under Antonio Conte. We've seen all the stuff coming out about pre-season about Spurs in terms of how hard he's actually working this group and wanting to get those fitness levels right up there. And it's an interesting one for the first game of the season as well, because this fixture especially always seems to bring up the goods in terms of goals being scored. The last time they met, it was actually Southampton who came out on top with a 3-2 away victory in that game. Conte was in charge then. It was a couple of late goals to go ahead and turn that one around for Southampton. But Southampton are always a bit of a weird side, really. They are very much a momentum-based team for me. Last season, it did take them a little bit of time to go ahead and get going. They went winless for their first 7 matches. During the midpoint of the season, though, they really seemed to pick up their form, and then towards the end, they massively tailed off once again. I think if we would have took their form from January onwards, they actually would have been in the bottom 3 last season, which showed just how much they tailed off. I do think Spurs have a lot of goals in them this season. I think I'm in line with a lot of thinking of a lot of other people with the fact that the potential upside for this Spurs side is really quite scary this season, especially with the additions they've made on top of the quality they already had in that squad. So, score prediction for this one, I'm going to go 3-1 Spurs, with FIFA going 1-0 Spurs. Next then to Goodison Park for Everton up against Chelsea. Now, we saw last season how Frank Lampard sort of galvanised that Everton squad and really utilised the home crowd at Goodison. I think that'll be absolutely massive for Everton and improving on last season's finish. A tough way to start the season against Chelsea, albeit in recent history Everton have had a decent record against Chelsea. Chelsea have only won 2 of their last 9 meetings with Everton. Obviously that stretched back to last season where they went unbeaten against them. The blow for Everton coming into this season is the fact that Calvert-Lewin will be out for around about the first month of the season with a knee injury, which isn't great news for them. I did catch a little bit of their pre-season. I watched their game against Blackpool, and while there were some decent moves going forward, I thought Anthony Gordon looked quite good in that one. I'm expecting a big season from him. Defensively, I do still see them as quite vulnerable. Whether Tarkowski can improve them to a level where they'll need to be at this season, that remains to be seen. For a prediction in this one, I think it's the obvious one. I am just going to edge Chelsea for it. I don't think it'll be as easy as a few people are thinking, because Everton really got going at home last season. But opening day, I'm going to go 2-1 Chelsea. FIFA's going 2-0 Chelsea. Next then to Leicester up against Brentford. Plenty is being made of Leicester at this point in time. All their players are being linked away at the moment. And we had that news about Kasper Schmeichel the other day. James Maddison continues to be linked with that move to Newcastle. Fofana as well, and being linked with the move away. Having said all of that, they're still a very good, capable group of players within this Leicester setup. I did get to see a little bit of them in pre-season. They came up against my side, Preston North End. I know that it's, you know, a difference in leagues and standard and things like that, but going forward, I thought they looked pretty sharp, to be honest. Some nice link up between Harvey Barnes and Jamie Vardy in that game. The problem that Leicester may have in a game like this is the fact that Brentford bring such a big set-piece threat into these sort of matches, and that was where Leicester was so vulnerable from last season. 19 of their goals they conceded last season, Leicester, were from set-piece situations, and Ivan Toney is absolutely going to wreak havoc against a side like that. It will be interesting to see what the future holds for Leicester's goalkeeping department, whether Brendan Rodgers does go ahead and put his faith in, you know, a Daniel Everson or a Danny Ward. Speaking as a Preston fan, I'd absolutely love to see Everson getting his chance in the Premier League. In terms of a pure shot stopper, he was, for me, one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship last season. Does still probably have his limitations elsewhere in terms of distribution and a few other things, but as a pure shot stopper, there's no doubt in my mind that he has that ability to go right to the top. For a prediction for this one, a draw wouldn't surprise me, but do you know what? I'm just going to edge Leicester on home advantage. 2-1 Leicester, FIFA's going 2-0 Brentford. Next then to Old Trafford for Manchester United up against Brighton. And do you know what? I actually think this is a pretty tough game to call. Brighton started last season fairly well, so they've got a history and track record of starting pretty fast out the gates. They only lost 2 of their first 9 Premier League matches last time around, and they did cause to be a little bit of an annoyance to a few top 6 clubs as well. Brighton, along with Crystal Palace, drew more matches than any other Premier League side last season with 15, so a draw wouldn't massively surprise me. And Ten Hag hasn't exactly had the full pre-season and transfer window up until this point that he'd have been hopeful for. You know, with this game right around the corner now, they've still got the Ronaldo situation rumbling, Frankie de Jong as well, and a few new players to go ahead and bed in who are maybe a little bit of a ways behind in terms of their pre-season schedule as well. Having said all of that, it's going to be a good atmosphere at Old Trafford, you'd imagine, and with Erik ten Hag, this being his first game in charge, I think Manchester United probably do just about see off Brighton. I'm going to go 2-0 United. FIFA's going to go 2-0 United. I wouldn't be massively surprised if Brighton did throw a spanner in the works though. It's then to West Ham up against Manchester City. A tricky game, do you know what, for Man City to be going into as their first of this Premier League season. I think that West Ham are absolutely knocking on that door at the moment for a place within the top 6, and coming off the back of the transfer window that they've had so far up until this point, yeah, I wouldn't put it past them taking points off Man City in this game as they did the last time these two sides met here. Manchester City, we got to see the first taste of Erling Haaland in competitive action in that Community Shield game up against Liverpool. I never really know how much you can read into games like that, really. I mean, they lost the Community Shield last year against Leicester and ended up winning the league regardless of that. It was interesting though to look into sort of Haaland's role and why it may take him a little bit of time to go ahead and fully adapt to the system, albeit in that game I think he himself had an XG of 1.5, and so if he's averaging that against Liverpool, I know he didn't hit the back of the net in the end, but he's going to get the service this season, and when it does finally click for him, I think he's going to be a scary force in the Premier League. Score prediction time, I'm just going to edge Man City for a 2-1 away victory, League, but like I say, wouldn't be surprised if West Ham do take a point from that one. FIFA's going 2-0 Man City. But guys, there we have it. Those are my Premier League predictions going into the opening weekend, which kicks off on Friday. If you would like to see more weekly score predictions coming out for the Premier League season, do show your support on today's video by leaving a like, and do let me know in the comments down below, how do you see everyone getting on this opening weekend. If you're not ready as well, make sure to sign up to the FPL League, link down below. But apart from that, thanks for tuning in guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.